Hey everyone, ever wondered which of the survivors each and every killer would lore-accurately target or tunnel in the trials? Whether it be due to a prior personal rivalry, an unfounded hatred, or something entirely different. Who is every killer's lore-accurate obsession? Let's get into it. Trapper, I'm going to go with David as a character who I think will remind him of himself, but also his father. For one, the two of them share a decent resemblance, with David also having a similar build to young Trapper, and even haircut, even though it sounds a bit silly, reminding Evan of his past, better self, which will surely expose and anger him, making him violent. Then David's own use of violence and his strength to deal with problems during his time as a debt collector would also set Evan off, I think, and make him dislike David and want to target him, as it would remind him of his father, and the iron fist he used to rule his estate. I think he would see a lot of himself in him, basically, and it would make him angry. Wraith, I think, would want to tunnel Ace, and mainly down to Ace's completely opposite life view. Whilst Ace's life hasn't been perfect, he's skeeved by on luck, with use of gambling and intermingling with illegal organizations to sustain it, something Wraith would hate as someone who had a very unfortunate and unlucky life, and whilst doing his best to avoid evil, it always seemed to find him. I think he would take some personal offense to Ace. Billy would more than likely get tunnel vision for the characters dressed up like police, or well, ones who are, such as Leon. He's probably the best example with his full police outfit and look. He would target him due to the sheriffs and deputies of his hometown being a part of his abuse, overlooking his parents' mistreatment of him, and even joining in on it, which led to Billy greatly disliking the sheriff and his deputies. Seeing someone similar, I think his instincts would kick in. Nurse, I could see tunneling Rebecca. Rebecca being a character that is also a medic and so nurse of sorts, but also a very optimistic and positive person, something which may remind Sally of how she once was when she was younger and hopeful, and I think Rebecca would open that wound, angering Sally and causing her to get tunneled out. Myers would surely want to tunnel out the one that got away, Laurie. Laurie was one of few survivors of Myers' massacre back on Halloween night, but also the person he seemed obsessed with, stalking her most prominently through the film and trying to kill her but failing. Given this opportunity in the realm, and Myers will surely hard focus her this time. Hag, in her currently animalistic state, I could see wanting to hunt down the character who most greatly threatens her power, Michaela, a character who brought and wields the boons, a counter to hexes, or the hexes' opposite seemingly. Therefore I could see Michaela being her target, if and when she's in her trials. Doctor is just kind of insane, and I can't really picture him having a specific target, honestly, but rather just being happy tormenting just about anyone who he can experiment on, viewing people as subjects over anything else. I did think possibly Jake, considering he's the one survivor who's able to easily counter his Scream-focused power due to having calm spirit. This essentially ruins Doctor's power and experiment, and so he'd hate Jake the most and want to tunnel him. Huntress, I think, would likely target anyone who reminds her of these soldiers who entered the Red Forest, with them disturbing her family's quiet life, and also possibly being responsible for the death of her father, who we otherwise know nothing about. Therefore, Bill seems like a good fit, with him actually wearing a sort of army-esque outfit, and of course previously being a soldier. For Bubba, I'm going to go with Kate, and mainly due to her appearance most closely resembling that of Sally Hardesty, who was the only survivor of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, managing to escape Bubba. Bubba feels great anger and also nervousness when she escapes, fearful of what will happen to his family, but also to himself now that they'll inevitably be exposed to the world. Freddy, it will surely be Quentin. He'll target him as a character as he was already pretty obsessed with him and also holds quite a sizable grudge toward Quentin after Quentin previously killed him, or at least for a brief period he did. From Freddy's perspective, he'd need to settle the score with Quentin and would probably just enjoy hunting him anyway due to all of the torment he's already put him under. Pig would inevitably want to tunnel Tap due to Tap's open and persistent attacks against Jigsaw to try and bring him down by compiling all the possible evidence against him, wanting to expose him for all he's done, and for the death of his partner Sing. As Amanda is still devout and loyal to Jigsaw, seeing Tap would definitely set her off. It's also telling that in her Mori she goes for the neck, much like how Jigsaw himself did when he slashed Tap's throat. Her whole Mori is about recreating that trauma and referencing him to some extent, so he'd definitely be her target. Clown is a bit of a weird one, as I could see him going for the characters with the fingers he deems the best. I know, creepy, but that's realistically what he would do, I think. And I've got no guesses in that regard. That's a clown thing. The other option, and maybe a little bit of a weird one, but Ash, and simply down to the fact that he has less fingers to choose from compared to any other survivor, and less fingers in general, which may anger Clown, making him want to tunnel him out first. I don't know. Spirit is likely having her vision manipulated to see the survivors as her father, or potentially even her ancestors who haunted her life. Therefore, the individual survivor likely doesn't matter too much, but if I had to pick, I'd go with probably just someone who vaguely resembles her father, a middle-age-ish man like Vittorio, say. Really though, like I said, I doubt she sees clearly, so it's sort of whatever, I think. Legion I could see targeting just any form of authority figure, but particularly any police officers or any lawmakers, I suppose. Possibly even Shane as a lawyer. Anyone like Tap, Leon, or Jill who enforced the law would get targeted by Legion, I think, with them now free in the realm and wanting to exert their power over these figures who they feel have oppressed them. Maybe Tap is the best example, as he's also a bit older, which would likely trigger them more. Plague is interesting as obviously she's in a very unique spot where she's out of time compared to most of the survivors, and so won't understand much about them. One I could see her disliking though is Hattie. Hattie being well known across the Omniverse to be a key combatant toward the entity and its realm, as a highly devoted killer to the entity, likely being responsible for the creation of the cult that worships it. She would take great issue with Hattie being so combative toward what is her god, basically. Ghostface is a tricky one, as I think he would be most interested in someone who would give him a challenge, and so I think Zarina is a good pick, a motivated character who also starkly opposes the viewpoint of Ghosty, and spent her life exposing criminals like himself who otherwise had evaded their crimes. Ghosty could see her as a worthy adversary almost, and so want to target her, but also possibly test her. Demogorgon, I think it likely doesn't have the same hatred that many of the human killers do, but if it had to be anyone, it would surely just be the Stranger Things crew, with them being its direct combatants during the invasion of Hawkins. Maybe specifically Steve or Nancy, as they both directly attack the Demogorgon from season 1 of the show, which seems to be the one in-game. Oni, it would have to be Michonne. Poor Michonne, but she of course wields a samurai sword or katana, a weapon which Kazan views in very high regard, and would view as something only a true samurai and would view as something only a true samurai should wield, which Michonne is not, or at least not conventionally trained. Oni's entire dark pilgrimage across Japan was down to the mass of false samurai who were around at the time who Kazan vowed to wipe out. Therefore I could see Oni targeting Michonne. Deathslinger, similar to a character like Spirit, appears to be having his vision manipulated to see the survivors as people who have previously wronged him, such as Henry Bayshaw, his old boss, and the prison warden. Similar to Ghosty, I could see him wanting a challenge and so targeting someone very competent, possibly a character like Ada who would put up a good fight, and likely be able to actually avoid many of his shots. With her incredible acrobatics she frequently pulls off. Pyramid Head I think would likely target Tori, if anyone at all, due to the guilt she surely holds, and still does hold, surrounding her support of the Black Talon, a cult devoted to the entity. Whilst Tori isn't necessarily guilty of acts so far as killing, she does contribute to many bad deeds and horrible rituals, that she still seems in denial about just how bad they are, so I think Pyramid Head would help her realize, a bit like it helped James. Yunjin is another option as a character who stood by as Trickster committed his crimes, and she seemed to be pretty sure of his guilt yet did nothing, which resulted in many more deaths. Therefore Pyramid Head may target them with the intent of sort of teaching them a lesson. Blight seems completely out of his mind, and so I'm not overly sure who makes the most sense for him to go for. Possibly we could go with Tori also, considering she's the closest thing to the entity, which Blight kind of has ongoing beef with after it threw him to the void. Therefore I could see him tunneling Tori almost in place of the entity. Twins. Sorry Tori, but I think her again, considering the worst moment of Twins' life was them being captured by the Black Veil cultists, Tori being a branch of the Veil as part of the Black Talon, and so this surely reminding the two twins of them. While she isn't dressed in the exact same dark cloak, they would surely recognize some of her markings and such. Trickster would surely want to tunnel the character who he deems has the best scream, and that's ultimately why he kills, is to hear the screams as he finds them thrilling. It's quite twisted to think about, but I think this means likely a character like Kate, as she's a singer and so has a good or melodic voice. Possibly V2 as well, although she was the drummer, I'm sure she would have helped with singing at points as well. Nemesis, it has to simply be Jill, which is super lore accurate. Nemesis literally tunnels Jill throughout Resident Evil 3, chasing her through Raccoon City, humanity, and attempting to wipe out stars, which I suppose would be the group he'd want to tunnel more widely in the realm. We do hear his desire still towards stars as well, as whenever he moris a stars member he does say stars, showing that his old programming to wipe them out is not entirely gone, and he absolutely still holds a grudge. Pinhead may want to tunnel Dwight if we're assuming the Cenobites do not like being in the realm, as Dwight was the one who opened the box and summoned them here to begin with. However, assuming this isn't the case, then it's a bit tough as they don't seem to have a specific preference, but more just whoever opens the box, so maybe it would just be Dwight regardless, as the original character who incited their arrival. He'd be the one they'd be most obsessed with. Artist, I have a bit of an abstract one, but it's Tae Young, as he was a proponent for AI with the creation of Mina. As an artist, I think he would likely get tunneled as a result of Kamina hating the idea of machines creating art for humanity, a thing which is sacred to her. Even if she has lost much of herself, something that always remains with her is her artwork and expression in that way. Seeing someone create music with AI would make her angry, and he would get tunneled for sure. Sadako is already very established to hate Yuichi due to him being the one survivor of her curse, managing to evade her for over a decade. Sadako killed both of Yuichi's parents after they viewed her cursed tape, and when Yuichi too viewed it, he became cursed, yet he survived by evading her all this time. So now in the realm with the opportunity to kill him, she'll surely follow through. The best case we have for Dredge, I think, is simply Hattie, considering she was present at the Garden of Joy and witnessed and reported on what happened there. Also because Hattie has a lot of repressed emotions surrounding the death of her parents, and negative feelings that could possibly draw Dredge's attention as well. Otherwise, it's just general force of evil. I don't think it would dislike or like any specific survivor. Wesker, it would of course be Chris. There's no other reasonable answer really. Wesker would surely tunnel him any chance he got. But it's interesting to consider whether he's tunneling him out of hatred or out of love. Who knows with those two? Knight, it would definitely be his chapter counterpart Vittorio, who he straight up hated, and largely for the fact that Vittorio was very anti-violence, and wanted to solve things without it. This was a key dividing factor between the two and led to Knight throwing him into a cell to rot, but Vittorio escaped by carving out some symbols and summoning the entity, leaving Knight without the satisfaction of killing him, a thing he will now surely pursue. Skull Merchant I could see wanting to just go for one of the rich people, as she frequently targeted CEOs or wealthy people, taking over their companies, killing them and then scrapping the company. Now with the opportunity to hunt them with ease and relish in it, then I could see possibly Jane being a target, or even Yunjin. I could also however see Merchant preferring a more survivalist based character wanting a challenge, as this seems to be a theme in her lore, so maybe Jake possibly as someone who could possibly actually evade her drones for some time. There's also of course the Lyra siblings who previously escaped her, which she may want to correct. Singularity, it's definitely Gabriel. Hux absolutely crashes out over Gabriel and is completely fuming when a puny human manages to somehow outsmart and overpower him, destroying his near-perfect body. Gabriel not only does this, but then escapes his grasp when entering the fog. Hux hates humanity, but he despises Gabriel. Xenomorph, it would surely and simply be Ripley, because she was responsible for basically killing it, with it only surviving in the DBD universe after being ejected into space due to the entity intervening. Therefore, Xena would have a very large desire for revenge, specifically on Ripley. I'm sure it would have issues with the other alien characters as well, knowing that they too fought and won against Xenos. Chucky actually recognizes Nicolas Cage and Ash in the lobby, and so I could see him targeting them, partly starstruck, but also being jealous potentially of their fame and notoriety. He is a raging narcissist after all, and so would want to take them down to prove himself above them, doing so by tunneling them out and hunting them down. It may also annoy him as Nicholas recognizes many other horror legends like Myers and Sadako, but he says nothing when it comes to Chucky, which may bother him. Unknown is a killer where there's definitely no definitive answer, with it just being a creature that seems very reactive based on the situation. We don't know anything about Unknown's motivations or desires, so it is hard to try and suggest who it would want over the others or to tunnel or whatever. It does however appear to target people when they're alone or off by themselves, and so maybe it'd go for a quiet and reserved character like Jake or Claudette possibly. Vecna I think would surely target the Troop, in part because they come from the same universe as him, but also because this was a group that vowed and set out to kill him and take him down, a concept he must find amusing but also insulting. He'd want to put them in their place surely and exert his power over them, showing just how foolish their journey to defeat him really was. Dracula clearly has a deadly blood feud and ongoing rivalry with the Belmonts, and so Trevor or Richter would surely be the top ones for him to tunnel or target. He is also a character who does have a hatred for humanity, and because they were responsible for the death of his wife, I could see him disliking someone like James, say, the most, as he actually chose to kill his own wife, lacking gratitude, and he's a human, so double whammy, wife killing and human. Dracula would be mad about it, I think. Houndmaster seems to have it out particularly for the original survivors who she has specialized voice lines for. However, the one she seems to harbor the most hatred for is Dwight, who she hates is the leader, or was the leader of the survivors. She says,
some leader.
And seems to take some personal offense to him as a ruthless leader herself, so I think she would target him, viewing him as pathetic but also wanting to weaken the survivor morale. Kaneki is most blinded by his desire to eat as he's hungry, and so I don't think he'd want anyone in particular due to this. However, if I had to pick, I'd go with possibly Dwight as well, as a sort of reflection of his pre-ghoul self and his prior weakness. Dwight is a similar sort of nerdy, nervous character that reflects back onto Kaneki, but hey, maybe this would have the opposite effect and he'd want to spare Dwight instead. I guess anyone who resembles Jason or even Rize, but I wouldn't say any of the survivors do, so I'm not sure who else I'd go for. Who do you think for Kaneki? Springtrap is a little tough as obviously his targets are usually kids, and so no one in the realm really fits the bill. I could see him similar to Chucky targeting people based on jealousy, going for some of the smarter characters like Tae-young. Possibly he'd target the parents instead, like Felix for example, knowing they may be more affected by his presence. Krasue is very jealous and always desired to be a singer and for fame, so maybe she'd hate and want to target a character like Kate, who gained her fame as a singer just through her talent and also positivity. She didn't need to make a deal with the devil of sorts and drink a mysterious potion and harbor a strange curse. She just did it with grit and talent, making her a prime target for the jealous Krasue. Henriette would surely and simply be 11, who he already paints as his rival, but also the person he seems to hate the most out of the entire Hawkins crew, as she's the one who originally sent him to the Upside Down and very nearly killed him, and she's pretty much always the first thing he blames or talks about when he's expressing why he's invading Hawkins. They got beef. Jason is kind of tough as well as a guy who just goes about killing people without too much of a preference seemingly, aside from like teenagers at lakes. Possibly we could just go with one of the younger survivors like Meg, who fits the profile pretty well, or maybe even Jason starts some beef with Myers, wanting to target Laurie as well for the same reason. I don't know. Let me know what you think though down below. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.